Hello there. Welcome to our YouTube channel InfoZone. We're here to help you maximize your impact with our channel. Join us on this exciting journey to collect knowledge and information. Today, we're delving into a pivotal moment in the 20th century, a moment that brought the world to the edge of nuclear catastrophe. We're talking about the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, a harrowing showdown between the United States and the Soviet Union during the Cold War. But before we dive into the crisis, if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell. We've got a lot of fascinating historical content coming your way. The Cuban Missile Crisis was a tense standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union that lasted for 13 days in October 1962. It was triggered by the discovery of Soviet nuclear missiles in Cuba, which posed a direct threat to the U.S. mainland. The crisis brought the world to the brink of nuclear war, as both sides were prepared to use their weapons of mass destruction if the other did not back down. However, through a series of diplomatic negotiations and secret deals, the crisis was resolved peacefully, averting a global catastrophe. The origins of the crisis can be traced back to the Cold War, a period of ideological and geopolitical rivalry between the US and the USSR that lasted from 1945 to 1991. The two superpowers competed for influence and dominance in various regions of the world, often supporting opposing sides in proxy wars and conflicts. One such conflict was the Cuban Revolution, which resulted in the overthrow of the US-backed dictator Fulgencio Batista by Fidel Castro and his communist guerrillas in 1959. Castro aligned himself with the Soviet Union, which provided him with military and economic aid. The US viewed Cuba as a threat to its interests and security in the Western Hemisphere, and tried to undermine Castro's regime through various means, such as economic sanctions, covert operations, and even an invasion attempt known as the Bay of Pigs in 1961. The Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev saw an opportunity to gain an advantage over the US by placing nuclear missiles in Cuba, which would deter any future US aggression against the island. He also hoped to balance the strategic situation in Europe, where the US had deployed nuclear missiles in Turkey and Italy that could reach Soviet territory. In July 1962, Khrushchev secretly ordered the shipment of medium-range and intermediate-range ballistic missiles, MRBMs and IRBMs, to Cuba, along with personnel and equipment to install them. The operation was codenamed Anadir, and was carried out under the cover of agricultural and civilian aid. The US was unaware of the Soviet plan until October 14, when a U-2 spy plane piloted by Major Richard Hazer took hundreds of photos of newly built installations in the Cuban countryside. The photos were analyzed by CIA experts, who identified launches, missiles, and transport trucks that indicated the Soviets were building sites to launch missiles capable of striking targets across most of the U.S. President John F. Kennedy was briefed about the situation on October 16, and he immediately convened a group of advisors and officials known as the Executive Committee, or EXCOM, to discuss how to respond to the missile threat. Kennedy faced a dilemma. He had to act quickly and decisively to remove the missiles from Cuba, but he also had to avoid provoking a nuclear war with the USSR. He had three main options: diplomacy with Castro and Khrushchev, a naval blockade of Cuba, or an air attack to destroy the missile sites. After much deliberation, Kennedy decided to pursue a combination of two options. He announced a naval quarantine around Cuba on October 22 in a televised speech to the nation, while also sending secret messages to Khrushchev through diplomatic channels. He demanded that the Soviets withdraw their missiles from Cuba, while promising not to invade Cuba or support any invasion attempt. He also secretly agreed to remove U.S. missiles from Turkey at a later date. The quarantine was enforced by U.S. naval forces that intercepted and inspected any ships heading towards Cuba. The Soviets initially refused to comply with Kennedy's demands, and continued to send ships towards Cuba. The tension escalated on October 24, when a Soviet ship named Marukla approached the quarantine line, followed by 4 others. The U.S. Navy sent destroyers and aircraft carriers to intercept them. The world held its breath as it waited for either side to blink or fire first. However, at the last minute, Khrushchev ordered his ships to stop and turn back. He realized that he had miscalculated Kennedy's resolve and public opinion in both countries. He also feared that a confrontation at sea could trigger a nuclear war that would destroy both nations and much of humanity. He decided to seek a peaceful resolution of the crisis through negotiations with Kennedy. On October 26, Khrushchev sent a letter to Kennedy proposing a deal. He would agree to remove the missiles from Cuba if Kennedy would publicly promise not to invade Cuba or support any invasion attempt. On October 27, he sent another letter adding another condition. Kennedy would also have to remove U.S. missiles from Turkey within 6 months. On that same day, a U-2 spy plane was shot down over Cuba by a Soviet missile, killing its pilot Major Rudolph Anderson, Jr. This incident increased the pressure on both leaders to find a solution before things got out of hand. Kennedy decided to accept Khrushchev's first offer, and ignore his second one. He sent a reply to Khrushchev on October 27, agreeing to his terms regarding Cuba, but making no mention of Turkey. He also sent a secret message to Khrushchev through his brother Robert Kennedy, who met with the Soviet ambassador Anatoly Dobrinin in Washington. He assured him that the U.S. would remove its missiles from Turkey within a few months, as long as the Soviets kept this part of the deal secret. Khrushchev accepted Kennedy's proposal, and announced his decision on October 28 in a radio broadcast. The crisis was over. The Cuban Missile Crisis was a pivotal moment in the history of the Cold War and the world. It demonstrated the dangers of nuclear weapons and the need for peaceful coexistence and cooperation between the US and the USSR. It also showed the courage and wisdom of Kennedy and Khrushchev, who managed to overcome their differences and avoid a nuclear war that would have had devastating consequences for humanity. The crisis also marked the beginning of a period of détente, or relaxation of tensions, between the two superpowers, which led to several agreements on arms control and disarmament in the following years. Thank you for watching the video. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to share more valuable content with you. Stay tuned, and remember, your success is our success.